an auditor's perspective, excuse me, why is it important for a compliance automation tool to have processing integrity in its SOC 2 report? So meaning the tool itself has their SOC 2, as they should. Why is processing integrity integral for that report?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, processing integrity is an interesting area within SOC 2 because it's one where, as an auditor, you have to spend more time than any other area by far defining like what the controls would be within that domain. Processing integrity, for those that aren't familiar, deals with how organizations ensure that data output by their systems is complete and accurate. And we end up doing a lot with systems that kind of process customer financial transactions. So, for example, like a payroll provider, you want to make sure that the pay that you're giving your employees is accurate based on the inputs that you put in. So processing integrity is primarily, we need to cover how the organization specifies the data inputs and the data outputs. So do you have documentation of what's going to come in, what's going to come out, kind of any transformations that occur, how you ensure the completeness and accuracy of what goes in, ensure the completeness, accuracy of the processing, ensure completeness and accuracy of what's come out of the system, and then how do you protect that data through each of those steps to prevent unauthorized modifications. So I mentioned financial systems. With a compliance automation tool like Drata, processing integrity is very important because they're expecting auditors, their customers, auditors, to use the data output by Drata in the audit. Our standards require that we use information in our SOC 2 audits or ISO audits or whatever that is complete and accurate and system generated. So traditionally, I would have, go into somebody's AWS environment and say, give me a screenshot of the users or the password settings. What allows me to rely on Drata for the audits is that they, within their SOC 2, have had an auditor go in and do the processing integrity, where that auditor will look at what information Drata is pulling in, how it's kind of processing that data, and then whether it's accurate coming out. So for example, like the monitoring controls, if Drata is saying all employees have multi-factor authentication, all right, for that specific test, what's being pulled in? What is the source of that data? Is it, your Google Workspace account? Is it pulling in that information? And then is it reading that information correctly? So, if all users have multi-factor authentication set up, does Drata say the test passed? If Drata, says a test fails, is that because one user doesn't have multi-factor authentication set up? And then how does it output that data to the auditor or to the end user to show that it's correct? So processing integrity is, very key, because we're essentially saying we can skip the system generated evidence and rely on what Drata is telling us, because they have had somebody independently audit their system to show it's, complete and accurate at the end of the day. So, that's kind of my take on it.
I would add though, it is, I think processing integrity is becoming more important for the automation tools. The AICPA called it out in their frequently asked questions, or their guidance document. It's not authoritative, but it's guidance. So they're pushing CPA firms to look at those reports, look at processing integrity, understand the controls that the auditor tested on the compliance automation platform, to say like, hey, these platforms are performing these types of tests. Did the auditor test the test, so to speak, to make sure that the test is performing as it's supposed to, right? So if it says multi-factors turned on, can an auditor rely on that? Because an auditor during the processing integrity testing said, go show me your lab environment, turn off multi-factor authentication, and show me that the platform, when you run your test, shows that these users don't have it turned on. So I think the AICPA is pushing auditors to dig a little deeper in those areas.